This job actually sucks. I actually regret kind of taking this one on. It's gonna probably work out, but right now we're investing a lot of time and money in epoxy. And now we gotta dump all this out and then clean all this up again and start from scratch almost.
Yeah.
All right, we just got this shipment and we're doing a really cool project for an architect up in Massachusetts, and they hired us to basically, and this is a sample that we're actually working on. Sean, who's behind the camera right now, is actually gonna CNC wine corks in for somebody's champagne room. So this is gonna be pretty sick, to be honest with you. This is uncharted territory, by the way. And there they are. Somebody likes drinking champagne. So these are all gonna go basically inlaid in here. Obviously gonna have to cut these. And then we'll try recessing them so they're exactly, symmetrical with each other. So I want to thank you guys for hooking me up somehow. I get the fun job of actually counting all these corks. So.
All right, so we're poured. These are gonna take about a day or two to fully cure, so we're gonna let these sit and level off. Once they are cured, we're gonna pop them out, and then we're gonna plane these down.
2 days later.
All right, it's been a couple days, so we're ready to pop these out. All right, so bottom layer is cured. We gotta pop these out, plane them down, and not cut. No. And so for these floorboards, they're going to be actually 2 different size corks. So what I did, I went ahead on Vectric and did the 2 different sizes and kind of put them into rows. And we did a little pocket, so each size is going to go in. So we have a normal size and then one that's slightly smaller, and they're going to alternate rows.
All right, so we're hitting a little bit of a snag here with the champagne room job. When we did the sample, it was a small piece of epoxy and it didn't bend or anything like that. But when we put this into a 9-foot piece, which you can see down here on the floor, it's not the same game. So we're bringing it down to 3/8 of an inch, and it's just flopping around everywhere, and it's actually starting to chip out on the planer, which is not ideal. So I actually called the architect to see if we can kind of do this a little bit different. What we're gonna do is we're gonna actually take a piece of oak, CNC it out, pour the epoxy in there, and actually have it adhere to the bottom of it, so we have a little bit more stability when we actually plane it before we put the corks in it, if that makes sense. So what we did is we had Sean CNC some oak out, and we're actually going to pour the epoxy inside, so there's a little more stability to this. Now granted, it's still going to be thin because the floor has to finish at about 1/4 inch with a tolerance of up to 7/8, but we're shooting for 3/4. So right now there's a couple of knots in the wood. I'm going to pour some 5-minute epoxy in there, and honestly we probably shouldn't be pouring on our CNC bed, but I don't want to move it around because there's a chance that the wood will move. I mean, everybody who works here knows I'm not the cleanest when it comes to pouring epoxy and stuff like that, and I'm really not overly thrilled to do this on this machine, but we want to keep it nice and flat, and it's all screwed down. So okay, so it's the next day, and after we poured this, like I said, we did a deep pour with tabletop epoxy to try to get this to set up, and honestly it's pretty well there. It's a little bit tacky, which is perfect. I don't have to sand this now, and I can just put regular tabletop over the top because I really only have less than 1/4 of an inch to kind of bring it up to the top.
So now that the channels are cut out for the corks, we laid it into a form getting ready for it to pour, and while we're doing that, Rick is cutting all these corks. Now there's 160 big corks and 195 smaller corks that go in each panel, and there's 2 panels. So Rick's got his work cut out for him.
This job actually sucks. I would probably work out. And now we gotta dump all this out and then clean all this up again. We started off with this sample, which actually worked out pretty good. But this is a definite one-off. And honestly, we may never do this again. But it's definitely a cool project. But we started off with a layer of epoxy, which we have here on the sample. And then we covered the corks. And then we poured like a deep pour over the top of that, and then another pour of tabletop epoxy to kind of make it nice and clear. So being a small piece, we put it through our planer, which was perfectly fine. But once we got this big piece, it was like kind of wonky, and we were actually chipping out the epoxy. So, you know, Sean and I talked about taking a piece of wood and CNCing out a cavity for this to actually sit in. So now when we put this through, it would chip out the wood rather than the epoxy. So that's where we're at now. But this project has had its ups and downs, and mainly downs, to be honest with you. We've been stressed out about it. But now we're to the point where we're taking these corks, and when we start to lay them in there, we have to finish at 3/4 of an inch. So we realized we were cutting it really close. So we basically went and sanded these all down like at least another 1/8. That way when we go over the top, the last thing we want to do is actually take these logos off. So now we have enough room. Where we're at here is these are all sealed. We're actually waiting for epoxy to come in, unfortunately, which was bad timing because we just poured 30 gallons of epoxy into a table. But nevertheless, it's coming today. We're going to let this set over the weekend. We'll pour it today once everybody leaves and the dust isn't kicking up in here. So now that everybody's left for the day, it's Friday, and we should be able to keep the dust down. Pretty dust-free right now. Everything is cleaned. So now we're going to do the Wisebond deep pour, and I want to thank Wisebond for sponsoring this video and continuing to support our channel. We are going to get started on this right now.
That same evening.
All right, so it's 7 o'clock at night. I just called Sean to come in. We poured this, and it's not going so great.
Yeah, there's still a ton of micro bubbles and pieces of cork that I guess were either attached, and once the deep pour came in, it kind of knocked them out. So now there's little bits floating in it.
Yeah, so this is like a one-shot deal. This lady, these are her actual corks, and like if we let this cure and harden, it's over. This job actually sucks. I actually regret kind of taking this one on. It's gonna probably work out, but right now we're investing a lot of time and money in epoxy. And now we got to dump all this out and then clean all this up again and start from scratch almost.
Yeah.
So, hope you guys enjoy this.
Because we're not.
It's Monday, and the cork job isn't going as planned, but what had happened actually is when we poured the black, everything was perfectly fine. But when we sealed the corks, there was like little crevices, and then if you miss one little spot of the cork, it's just releasing air bubbles like crazy. So Sean and I aborted the mission on Friday night, and I actually came in the next morning and I basically took a fast set epoxy and I just started painting over everything, kind of making it more vibrant and sealing all those bubbles. So right now I'm degassing the epoxy, and right now we're using a deep pour epoxy to release all the bubbles so it looks like glass. So this has been frustrating, but we're gonna keep going. Let's hope this shit goes good this time.
The first panel has gotten its deep pour and is curing. We're going to start the second one. Now hopefully we learn from our mistakes and this one goes much more smoothly.
All right, so we're at the point now with this cork job. Everything looks great, but this is like the make or break point. We have to send this through the planer to make it flat, but it's really hard to tell how close the corks are to the epoxy. So if I rip one of these corks off, this project's pretty much over, and that's legit. All right, so this is what I've been losing sleep over for the past like week or two, is cutting the final cut on this cork project. So if we take big chunks out of this right now, we're kind of in bad shape, but let's hope everything goes smoothly. We can wrap this up. There we go. All right, so we just finished cutting the first piece. Huge hurdle. Happy that's done. We got one more to go. And then we got to put some tabletop on it. And hopefully, we're finally done. Sean, you want to say anything? All right, so this is the final cut. This is the greatest moment possibly of my life, other than my wife, marrying my wife and having my son. I want to get this done and over with. I am so pumped right now. The worst part of this is over. I'm gonna sand these down at this point, and then I'm gonna take them into the dust-free room. I'm gonna pour tabletop over it. You know, getting it in one shot with tabletop can be a little tricky, but it won't be that bad, honestly, because these are solid epoxy. There's no wood involved. So I believe we'll probably get this done today. Okay, so my intentions were to actually pour both of these, but as I was mixing the epoxy, it started to heat up a little bit quicker than I had hoped. But then again, I did have it sitting in the vacuum chamber trying to release the bubbles because it was kind of sitting in one area. So when I noticed it started getting warm, obviously I knew I didn't have a whole lot of time to work with it. And rather than go mix up another batch right now and basically go over the top of this one and get dirt and dust in it, I'm just gonna let this one be, do the other one tomorrow, and then wrap it up. But I'm very happy with how this looks right now.
We're done. We're done.
That's a wrap. Thank God.
What a project.
This was one of the most challenging projects that I've ever personally done, and I think,
Yeah,
Sean,
me
you
too.
say there was a lot of hurdles, a lot of wasted epoxy, but we didn't give up. We kept moving forward, and we're very happy with the results.
Yep. And so we can't show the finished location, but here, like, it's done. And next thing was we're gonna bring them up to Massachusetts and deliver them.
Yeah, we're gonna ship them up to Boston.
Ship them up to Boston.
So there's only one last thing you can do, and it would only be fitting if we had a little bit of champagne.
Just don't get it on there. Yeah.
Cheers, Sean. Great job.
You too.
Yeah, a lot of lost sleep over this one, that's for sure.
Oh yeah.
Cheers.
Cheers.
We want to thank you guys one last time. We are at 24,000 subscribers at this point, almost at 25. You know, keep following us. Projects are getting really cool. We got a lot more coming up. We'll see you on the next video.